Nvidia is going to destroy Apple and Microsoft with its new computer.
Welcome to the All Future podcast, where we talk all things Apple, tech, AI, and much more throughout the week. And coming at you remotely this week is Matt, back from Louisiana in LA, but we decided we didn't want to quite deal with the chaos that is going on in LA right now. So we're just playing it safe, doing this from home and talking about all these products Nvidia talked about this week. It's really crazy to see everything that Nvidia is always talking about. I feel like every possible new computer space that involves AI, they are developing it.
Absolutely, right. And my kind of cynical late stage capitalism mind is always like, man, like I feel like these guys, they saw their stock prices skyrocket so much. They're like, how can we keep this going? How can we keep chasing this dragon, right? And it's like, oh, like let's get involved in anything remotely that has to do with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So this first one is something that I think will eventually be a consumer product. But to start, it seems like more of something a company might buy, and it's their Project Digits mini personal computer. So this is a $3,000 personal computer that is powered by the GB10 super chip, and they say it's 1,000 times more powerful than the average laptop. Now, I do have a question for a stat like that. What are we looking at for an average laptop, do you think, Matt?
They're looking at whatever gave them that number to be able to say something super high, right? Because I mean, the kind of traditional way to measure this is in flops. But I mean, anytime like a company uses like X times more powerful, they're picking whatever spec they need to make it sound more powerful. Now, is this thing absolutely more powerful than an average laptop? Yes, but I mean, how much more powerful will it be at, I don't know, running Final Cut or Adobe Photoshop or something like that? Probably actually not that much, right? Because that's not really, it's really what it's designed to do. So it is much more powerful in some ways and probably about the same in others. But it's interesting that, you mentioned that it's kind of seems like it's more for, I don't know, business side right now. I would argue it's kind of like a prosumer level thing, like someone who's kind of like, a hobbyist kind of person. They want to mess around with, and we haven't really mentioned it yet, but what this thing is really set up to do, in my mind anyway, maybe you have a different take on it, is to run local LLMs, right? Like that's what it's built for, right? And if you're kind of dabbling in that world and trying to run models locally instead of sending them to the cloud, and you've got a little bit of extra cash flow, like I see a lot of kind of AI hobbyist people being really excited about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So apparently it's smaller than a Mac Mini, and it has all these crazy specs like a 4 terabyte SSD, 128 gigabytes of RAM. But the things that really matter are the 1 petaflop AI computer and 20 ARM cores for the CPU. And yeah, I guess at $3,000, you're right, because that's not Mac Mini pricing, but that's definitely Mac Studio pricing or something. So plenty of people are buying products in this price range.
The same people that would buy a Vision Pro at $3,500, right? Like it's like these kind of people who are into experimenting with new tech or whatever. And then if you are, I can think of a lot of good uses for this. If you want to keep your AI modeling all in-house, like some weird cases for this. Not weird cases, actual cases, things that are out there, right? I mean, it's, I don't know if it's an open secret or just at this point everyone kind of knows, right? That, I mean, so many companies are using generative AI or LLMs built within their workforce or to replace workers or whatever. They're integrated in, right? And if you are, say, a mid-range graphic design firm, right? And right now, if you are, I would be willing to bet dollars to donuts you've at least dabbled in using something like Midjourney to get started on projects or to get, different iterations of stuff out quickly. And the problem with that is that all that stuff's going to the cloud, right? So like if you have, like say like you're working on some project that almost everything for a major brand is going to be under some kind of NDA, the problem is right now is that you hop on, if you hop on just the kind of stock Midjourney that runs through Discord, that's all getting posted on a public profile on midjourney.com that you can get, that anyone can get to, Companies are going to need, if they're going to use this thing for business, and by this thing I mean generative AI, LLMs, you're going to want to run that locally, right? You're going to have to just for legality reasons, and because the other side of this is that you don't want people to know how much you're relying on AI. So like if you can run it all locally, there's no evidence out there in the public of it. You don't even need to set up an account that people can trace back some email to or something, right? You can do it all in house. And that's why I think this thing is going to probably get a lot of people kind of excited, is people that are kind of in that zone.
Yeah, absolutely. I was mentioning before we started that I've been like building this server with a friend, and I haven't done like a proper PC build before. And I was just asking a bunch of questions like, wait, can I just add like an AI chip to this once that's becoming more of a thing? And he was like, probably. And I just like this whole idea of what we've talked about many times, just this home server that is your own AI thing. And it's learning, and you're probably going to be more comfortable with it learning a lot about you because it's all staying locally. And then the other thing I think about is just with something like this Digits computer, it doesn't go down in the normal sense that we've seen recently. Like GPT has actually been down a couple times for pretty long stretches, like an entire day. And if that's part of your workflow, that's kind of like you're out for the day. Did you have to deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, not every day do I ask GPT something, but yeah, fairly regularly. And yeah, whatever that day was that it was just down for, I don't know, 7-8 hours, whatever it was, I definitely was like, huh, that's weird. And I just moved on with my day, because it's not like I'm using it for something that is critically important to me, right? But that's as people start to rely on these things more. And I know people that do. And I think people are wary to admit this, right? But like you, most people I kind of know professionally are in creative fields, and people at this point don't want to admit how much they're starting to rely on these tools. And the example I have of when it was down is I've got a writer friend, and they use GPT not to write the finished thing, but for kind of like research organization, just different kind of like as an assistant almost to their writing, and it went down, and they're like, oh man, like I'm a little thrown off my game here, because I've been so used to using this tool, right? It'd be all of a sudden, it's the equivalent of if you're a graphic design guy and you're used to using Photoshop every day, and all of a sudden they took away the lasso tool and reverted back to version 2.0 or something. You're like, oh, well, I can still do the stuff. I still have the knowledge and I can execute this, but now this tool set that I've been so used to is gone right now. And so, it's funny that it's starting to get to that point for some people, that they've got these things so integrated into their workflow that like a down for 3-4 hours matters to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have one use case that I do all the time is I take my entire video script and summarize it for Andrew, who makes the thumbnails, just to make sure we're absolutely on the same page. And I used to do the summary myself, and now it does it, and it's, I don't know, probably better. But that was down, so I just used Grok. And I could have used Gemini, or I could have used any, but that's because I'm just simply pasting that script in, and it doesn't need like anything it's learned about me. And that's where we get to that whole separation of like an AI that learns about you, that you're super reliant on this specific one, even though this one could do it maybe just as well. It doesn't know that stuff about you. But in any case, this can do 200 billion parameters of large language models, and then it's has this Nvidia ConnectX networking thing that can connect two of these computers together to run 405 billion parameter models, which that's an impressive number. But do you know what? Do you know how to explain parameter models quickly?
I got nothing, man. I got nothing. I had to look this up myself. So, like, I think the bottom line, I think that the real takeaway from this, it's more tech jargon just to explain how absolutely this thing kind of outclasses what's on the market right now that people are using for this type of thing outside of custom built rigs. And that's where I think it kind of comes down to, back to your kind of story of you trying to build a server, right? Like up to this point, if you really have been interested in AI modeling and internal kind of AI stuff, you've had to make custom rigs, right? And this is an off the shelf, unintimidating form factor even. It looks like this is a standard form factor for PC these days, like ASUS makes this thing called the NUC, I think, or whatever. They're kind of like smaller than a Mac Mini, bigger than an Apple TV kind of size. That I think consumers like, right? They're like, oh, this doesn't take up a lot of space. It doesn't seem like I'm having to learn how to build a huge PC tower rig. It's just yeah, it's just a nice form factor for it. And I think that's what really matters here is that you're getting this immense power that was already available to you, but now it's in a thing that you can actually just buy off the shelf.
Absolutely. And I'm very curious to see where this goes, because this is now competing with people that make computers like Apple, who is adding all of these AI capabilities into their computers, but it's Nvidia is on the other hand, or on the other side, going, okay, we got this really good functionality over here, and you can like really run full LLMs offline on this supercomputer to a degree, versus what is Apple doing over here? And right now it just looks like fairly basic stuff that it's running locally. So probably this is just something that's going to push everyone in the whole industry, along with the gaming industry, because Nvidia talked about their new gaming cards this week, the GeForce RTX 50 series, which is powered by Blackwell AI. It's a $2,000 graphics card, and this is pretty cool because it takes about the same functionality, but then adds all this AI stuff that will process in real time and actually generate in real time. Did you see the demo for this?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's a lot of stuff we've been talking about, like what's going to be unlocked in gaming once they really start to integrate a lot of this more advanced AI processing and stuff to it, and generative AI. Yeah, seems cool. It was funny, like somehow, like sometimes I get like PC Master Race Reddit board suggests it to me, even though like I never really look at that board a lot or whatever. And it was a lot of people who were like, man, like I just spent all this money on this graphics capability, and now like, oh, like that has like, you know, people who are buying these like $2,000 graphics cards, like that's now knocked down to that same ability. It's going to cost you like $300-$400, and now there's this thing which is doing something completely another level with it. And it really is kind of like that line in the sand of what the capabilities of these things are, and it's like in another 4 or 5 years, you're going to need something that's built for generative AI stuff in gaming, because like so many things are going to start to rely on it. They just were showing these demos. I forgot. I think maybe it was Xbox, maybe it was PlayStation. Just about how much generative AI is built into kind of what they're testing for upscaling. You know, like so, like you can essentially, your actual machine is just really processing like the 4K graphics, but it's using generative AI to give it much more fidelity and details as you're moving without having to actually like render those with full processing power, which is cool. I mean, it's cool if you're a gamer. I think people are going to love this stuff. I say that. The people who are into the specs are going to love this stuff. What none of this does is actually necessarily make a better game, right? Like it's like oh, it's going to look a lot cooler, it's going to like be easier to play and do all this kind of stuff, but is the game going to be more enjoyable? And maybe some of these things will. You know, one of the examples is like having like a teammate that's an AI teammate, and that he's so much better at things than a you know, kind of the standard NPC kind of character you could have in the past. And that's cool stuff. I think that's neat. I think gamers are going to like that. I think what the real problem is going to be is selling this to outside of kind of the spec nerd populace, and people really realize, oh, this will actually make your game more enjoyable, not just make it so you see some extra stitching on a backpack or whatever it is.
Yeah, and like my assumption, or the way I understand it, is that this would probably be something that's very cool but niche to a certain degree until it expands out, and then AAA games like actually rely on it to where like the next generation of all PC gaming and Xbox and PS5 and all that stuff requires a chip like this in order to actually play the games that are reliant on this tech. Would that be accurate?
Will it be? I guess we'll see. I agree with it. You know, I think you're right. And I think that's probably how it's all going to play out. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen other demos like this where it's generating Minecraft in real time, but here this is kind of like combining using the code and generating stuff in real time and doing prediction, basically just to, like you were saying, create better frame rate, better fidelity, all of this stuff. And I think that's really cool to see, because that's always a huge part of gaming is that it's not loading things that you're not at. And so then if you get there too quickly or stuff like that, you see it render in real time, or it's lagging a little bit. And getting that quicker and quicker is the whole idea of, I think, game development on the tech side. So this just completely changes the game. I'm excited to see where all of this goes. But another thing that is potentially changing the game is NVIDIA's entry into autonomous driving. So one thing I will say, I have a Tesla channel, so I talk about autonomous driving quite a bit, and a lot of people have doubted Tesla's full self-driving for many years, rightfully so, because they've been talking about it coming right around the corner, and it has not come right around the corner. But the latest version is very good, and they're collecting a lot of data on it. And NVIDIA's CEO even said, quote, Elon has a great advantage because his AI factory for his cars is fantastic. It has a lot of NVIDIA gear in it. He talks about how their algorithms are basically the best in the world. They have a huge data advantage and all this stuff. So NVIDIA is looking to do kind of a similar technique here, but they're partnering with basically the rest of the industry.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? Again, like, I think the big headline of all these NVIDIA stories is hey, look at all the things we're engaged in, shareholders. Please, let's make the stock go up. Right? So they're like talking about all these different aspects they're in. I will say, here's something I have noticed, and you've probably not noticed because we live in kind of different parts of the greater Los Angeles area, is that people are starting to say Waymo instead of Uber as kind of the go-to word for a rideshare service.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, like it's kind of like, instead of saying, "Oh, let's Uber there," I've heard people just in conversation say, "Oh, let's Waymo there," or "Oh, we just Waymo'd here," right? Everyone I know who has used Waymo is 100% sold on it, right? No one, everyone like kind of has the same story. They're like, "Oh, I got in it. It's a little weird because there's no driver and it drives you, and it's maybe overly cautious or whatever." But at the end, they're like, "But I infinitely prefer this to the Uber system." And so I think what these kind of companies are doing, the robo-taxi companies are doing, that Tesla and these other companies haven't really been able to do as much, is let people kind of try before they buy the idea of self-driving and get more comfortable with it. And then, and if you're in, kind of core Los Angeles, you see Waymos all the time now. Like, you're just going to see them drive. Yeah. Like, it's a normal thing in the landscape now. And like I say, like, it seems like it's, people are, and I guess I know I live in a kind of a bubble of kind of tech forward people and more fluent people and all these kind of things. But at least in my bubble I am in, it's become kind of the accepted norm. It's like, oh, like, let's Waymo instead. So I think it makes a lot of sense for NVIDIA to be talking about, hey, we're in that space too, guys. Like, we're in everything, and we're ready to NVIDIA. We're the company powering the future. If that's not already a copyright tagline, you can have that one, NVIDIA. I think it's pretty good. So,
they definitely are. Yeah. This is an aside, and I don't think it means anything as far as functionality. But did you see the clip of the Waymo hitting like the delivery robot?
Oh, yeah.
I just thought that was pretty funny. Like, an accident, but it was hitting a different type of robot that is replacing something.
What a dystopian nightmare where our robots are hitting our robots.
Yeah, exactly. But in any case, this is called NVIDIA Drive AGX, and they're partnering with a bunch of Chinese automakers like BYD, Zeekr, Li Auto, and more. But then they're also partnering with Lucid, Mercedes-Benz, NIO, Rivian, Volvo, Xiaomi. That's another Chinese one. But yeah, like just so many automakers are going to be using this capability in the future. It makes a lot of sense, and it'll be interesting to see the difference here, because we're talking about two different things, like driver assistance that's really good, and then a actual robo-taxi. And so I think they talked about all of this, like synthetic data creation and learning from that in their press release, and talking about this at the event, versus there's real data collection that needs to happen as well for these systems to get to that next level. But all this to say, the future is autonomous is kind of the idea here. And NVIDIA is recognizing the leaders in the space right now, and then definitely going in to compete. And one last thing NVIDIA did talk about is their Nemotron LLM, which just seems to be giving a lot of competition in the LLM space, which we know we've had. But I guess it is important to consider because a lot of times NVIDIA is making the hardware that powers these things, but they're also in the software side of things. So they're competing with the companies that are reliant on their hardware, but on the software side.
Classic model, right? Like, Apple does that, Microsoft does that, Google does that, right? Like you're playing. If you play both sides, you never lose. So good plan for them, I think.
Yeah. So Nvidia seems to be really getting their toes into everything. We'll see where this goes for the future.